Today we're going to talk about Thomas Hübl, and if you've never heard about him before, I am very privileged to be the way you find out about him. Thomas Hübl is a mystic from Austria living in Israel. His primary offering is like a 2-year course called Timeless Wisdom Training, and he offers the Celebrate Life Festival in Germany every year, I think maybe 10 years running. I got introduced to him about 5 years ago, and my first real exposure was a book he had, or a audio program he has through Sounds True, called "The Power of We: Awakening in the Relational Space." I loved this book. I'd been really looking for a teacher in the we space. I'd heard about the we space, and I knew in my personal journey that shared spirituality was really what was next for me. And as soon as I heard his take on it, it really amped up my excitement and my understanding and my exploration. So, the one thing he said in this book, in this audio program, he talks about there are 3 ways to spiritual awakening. One is spiritual lottery. Um, Great job if you can get it. The second is great pain, which is often how people have spiritual awakening. The third, he said, is by putting it first. This was kind of meaningful to me because spirituality has always been in my top 5, usually in my top 3. But I had to be really honest, it was never entirely my number 1 most important priority. Um, and the way he describes it is like a Mumbai bus station, and there are all these hundreds of buses in every direction, and their destinations are on the top, and there's all kinds of things you can pick, and career, and fame, and just so many things. But when you get on the bus that's labeled awakening, then there is a seat on this bus for everything else, for career and family and all of the concerns of your life, because this spirituality is a spirituality that brings you deeper into life, not a spirituality that distances you from life in any way. So this was wonderful. And he says, when spirituality, when awakening is your top priority, you are awake. Now, we're all awake and asleep in different areas of our lives, and areas of numbness that we don't even know we're asleep. And as awakening is our top priority, it generates the energy that then slowly, gently, naturally brings all of us into awakening. The whole of the being. We embody more and more deeply. We're more and more sensitive to the feeling state of the body. And then through the full receptiveness of the body, more and more related to everything we encounter: people, nature, life itself, and society, and how we're contributing to the collective. So I really, really love his focus. And he has another program called Transparent Communication that is absolutely wonderful, and kind of this priority of fully embodying and being able to witness and be present to whatever is happening. One of the most beautiful concepts in that relational space that he talks about is the alchemical process that presence offers. So when we are truly present to another being, or maybe better said, if another being is truly present to us, they are offering us a alchemical process that's similar to digestive enzymes when you're digesting your food. That when you are present to me, you are offering me the ability to process my experience, the way enzymes help me process food. I can extract the nutrients, I can get rid of the waste. That is an enormous service, and it is being fully present, not distracted, not going to the next thing, not cursory attention. And that's just so beautiful. And I felt it 100 times, and you felt it too, whether you've had words for it or not yet. But when we are truly cared for in that way and really receiving the fullness of someone's attention. It is alchemical for us. And I think that's truly beautiful. Now, most of Thomas's work, and especially now, is in the collective trauma world. Obviously, you have to have this personal work and then the interpersonal work to get to the collective work. And, all of it's super important. And it's all very woven, very tightly together. But what he talks about is when we are fully present, life can emerge through us. Life is the future is emerging through us. Life is being born through us. And what gets in the way of that is when we carry the past around with us. And the way he talks about trauma um, is actually quite beautiful. And I don't think he says this, but he talks about trauma as he talks about trauma as something that we're not ready for, right? We have something that we're overwhelmed. We don't have the resources to process, and so these genius evolutionary organisms um, have mechanisms for dealing with that. And one is encapsulating that experience and freezing it and putting it away for later processing when we're more resourced. And it's kind of like, and this is when he doesn't say it this way, this is my metaphor. When you give a first grader a multiplication problem, they're like, oh my God, I don't even know what that means. And it's like, hey, no problem. We're just going to put that over here in this filing cabinet. And now in third grade, when multiplication comes and you've gotten your sea legs on multiplication, I'm going to pull this back up. And you're going to be like, oh, 3 times 4, 12, no problem. So trauma isn't necessarily something that's agonizing to redeem. It's just something that is frozen and that needs to be redeemed. So in second grade, when we're doing double digit addition, we might pull out that trauma and say, of the multiplication and say, "Oh, is it time?" And you look at him like, "No, no, I still don't know." It's like, "Oh, okay." That's part of our intelligence as we set that back down because we know we have our attention on awakening. We know we have our attention on learning. So we're going to keep doing our process and we're going to come and check this again from time to time and offer it space. And are you ready? Oh, okay, not yet. Oh, okay, yes. And have this relationship that's very resourced and very mature and not in a hurry, because hurry is a sign of trauma. That panic, when we cannot deal with something, is a trauma response. So the more resourced we become, the more present we become, the less hurry we're in, even the less hurry to become a better person or a more resourced person. We know we're on the right path. We know we're taking the steps, and we know with our attention and our warmth and our presence, things will unfold and warm up at the appropriate time. So that's really beautiful. But in the meantime, we're stuck with these frozen areas of past traumas in our body. And when we have these past traumas in like this, we can't receive life moving through us. And so the future can't be born through us because it's coming through all of these filters of the past that don't let a clear expression happen. And it's actually even um, more interesting because these frozen aspects, he talks about life itself moving through us in two ways as vertical downloads coming from the cosmos, our spiritual awakening, or the ethers, coming into us. And then horizontal downloads, which is like chatting with each other and all of the wisdom we share as people and in that communication. So we're getting life is moving through us both ways, but when we have these traumas, it reflects off of it. It meets it. It can't move through us, and not only can it not move through us, but it reflects off and it creates imaginary worlds, reflective worlds. And those reflective worlds have attributes that are better than this world, where this trauma wouldn't have happened and people would behave differently. And we just have all of these projections and we get hypnotized by these projections. So we have more and more difficulty living in the actual world as it actually is and engaging in it and taking our part in it as our ability to affect the future coming into being. And so not only are we in our engagement just allowing the past to move through us and projecting more of the past into the world instead of the future, we have these imaginary worlds we'd rather live in, and we're kind of mad at the real world for not being the imaginary world. So, yeah, let's clean that up because as we reduce these things, we're less captivated by the imaginary worlds. We're more engaged in the world as it is. We have more attention. We have more warmth. We can address these frozen areas with more tenderness, more willingness, less worry, with great care, but not this needing to be different, needing to be something other than what it is. That's big work. And he does I think, a really beautiful job giving not just context, but practices. Um, and his practices are, well, one of the more recent practices he's doing, well, all of his practices involve, really coming into noticing the physical body and coming into noticing the emotional content of this moment and the mental content and the breath, right? And the awareness itself. And so, as we can inventory our state of being through awareness, we can embody that awareness more and more. And we can access the intelligence of the whole body, which allows us to relate then with the wholeness of our being into the wholeness of the world. So, that kind of maturity allows us to meet our trauma with warmth, which just allows it to melt at the appropriate rate and allows us to integrate that puzzle, that multiplication problem. And when we integrate it, we bring the energy to a higher level. One of the things he talks about is what our ancestors integrated is wisdom for our time. What our ancestors didn't integrate is the trauma of our time. So the more we can integrate, the more wisdom we can offer the world, and the more freely the future can be born through us. Um, it's really beautiful and it's really complex, but that's the other thing in his work is we're not trying to we simplify the complexity by recognizing that everything is, we're all going through the same things in different ways. The paradox of the human experience. And it's the ability to quit trying to let go of the ideas that life should be something that it's not, and to really meet it as it is. Um, I'm not really sure. His work is so deep, kind of how to end this. But integrated history is presence, and in deep presence, the future emerges. So, and the clearer the channel of our allowing the future to emerge through us, the more intelligence in that and the less past referencing. One of the things he says, and I think this is what I'll end on, is that complexity is simplicity in the wrong size container. So when we're feeling overwhelmed, when we're feeling that it's too much, whatever this experience that you're dealing with or the big problems of the world, when complexity, he likens complexity to a plant that has outgrown its pot. and the roots everywhere, and the plant is kind of this, it just doesn't work. And when we put it in a new pot, a bigger pot, then the roots can relax and the plant can unfold and the simplicity can be revealed. And so this is something I really love and I use actually quite a bit. Um, when something is overwhelming or complex, I say, broaden the container, broaden my container, broaden my idea of what's supposed to happen next. There's so much that I haven't gotten to. But Philip Thomas Hübel's work is integral to my work. You can tell I don't edit these things too because I don't know how to edit. Um, Thomas Hübel's work is liberally sprinkled through everything I talk about because it is so powerful and I think so timely and so needed and so gentle and so welcoming and so mature and so present and unified. And it invites us into unity and it invites us into meeting each other in ways that are curious about how what new can be created through us and how can we contribute to a future that invites and welcomes and honors all of life. It is the exploration of a lifetime. He's doing a really great job with his, and it's really contributing to mine. And I hope it contributes to yours because it's powerful, gentle work, and it's optimistic at its core. And it allows us to imagine an unlimited future by weaving in all of these frayed threads that we have been accumulating for thousands of years. That I think now we have the wisdom and the resource to weave into a very powerful container of love. Thanks for listening.